Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de my rebuttal to what I thought was a very sad post on the fatfire subreddit from a guy similar enough to my situation who's early retired with relative abundance and yet doesn't seem to be having any kind of fun whatsoever. I mean, I am just amazed, okay, so I had to address it. Hey, I'm Zempak here. So most of you should know by now that I absolutely love not having a corporate overlord of any kind, right? I love deciding, to write my crappy little clips here in the most basic style possible. I mean, it was a stretch to add a bit of background music, let me be clear. I wear my crappy production values like a badge of honor because I have zero need to impress anyone since I have no need for monetization. Not saying that I wouldn't want some, right? Want and need is different, right? And not needing it makes life just easier. And that brings me to today's topic, right? I'm going to leave the link to the original Reddit post below in the description. So you do need to read the original post for context, right? So I'll read it to you. He says, I'm a young retiree, 36, male, wife, no kids, and not planning on having any. I'm always lying and hiding. It feels like. I live in an area where it's mostly retirees who are around 67, retired 2 years ago, lucky to have pension. I can't move because real estate is messed up here in southern Ontario, and my shitty bungalow is $1 million bucks. I'm just a smidge into fat fire according to the sub rules, but I'm basically the 5 mil is hell guy. Long story short, I always feel weird being in my backyard in the afternoon on a nice day, and if the neighbors are thinking, what WTF doesn't this guy work? They can't see me, but they would be able to hear my moving a chair on my deck. My anxiety is through the roof for the most part, but how do you overcome this? It was better during COVID because everybody was working at home. I guess it's all in my head, but how do I get out of my head? That's what the post said, okay? Now, once I got over the shock of it, I'm going to address the few tangible and actionable aspects and draw some conclusions on how a dude can be worth $5 million on a non-high-cost area and still somehow feel trapped or unsatisfied at the very least, okay? Number one, nobody else gives a crap what you're doing with your life, okay? So his point that he feels like he has to be very quiet and actually literally hide from his neighbors just sounds like an absurd position to be in, right? It is in his head, okay? First of all, why the heck are your neighbors home all day to be able to hear you or monitor you at all anyway? Isn't this a double-edged blade, right? If they can judge you, then you can certainly judge them back for not working, right? For being home to know that you're home. Now, to be fair, he said he lives in an area with a lot of retirees, so maybe that's the reason. To which I'd say, I mean, do you think retirees really want to live next to people who are not like them? Since you're both retirees, why not just bond over that? Why would you hide from your neighbors? Blows my mind this dude can achieve the dream of retiring early and still not achieve the idea of not giving a crap about what other people think, and is actually paralyzed by the possible misperception from them. Again, I repeat, most people do not give a fuck as to what you're doing unless what you're doing has some sort of direct effect on their lives, right? Let's say if you fired and decided it'd be a good idea to throw razors at your house during the day. Guess what? Your neighbors are absolutely gonna care and complain about you. But just hanging out on your deck, presumably next to their yards? I mean, do you live like near geriatric Spider-Men? No one's gonna raise a fuss because you wanted to reposition your lawn chairs. This is ridiculous, okay? Number two. Now, to be honest, before how silly I thought the poster was on about hiding from his old neighbors, I would actually have suggested he should just move. I mean, if I'm not a senior citizen, why the heck would I want to be surrounded by them? Now, I'm not knocking older folks. Heck, I play pickleball with older folks who are more spry than me, okay? But it's one thing to do post-retirement stuff, and that will inevitably get you in contact with some older folks because they're traditionally the type of folks who have the most free time, right? Especially during the day, right? But it's a totally different story to only be surrounded by them where you live. Especially based on what this poster sounds like. He sounds like he hasn't gotten too much going on besides just wanting to hang out at home for now. And that's doubly worse if you're surrounded by other folks who really does the same, right? Now, the poster mentions how he can't move because of the raised and elevated, maybe inflated real estate prices. To that I say, why is that a restriction, right? Just rent out your house and move somewhere younger, more dynamic, right? You should be surrounded by people who energize you. The guy's not even 40 yet, so go to an area go to a different area. It doesn't have to be across the world, could just be across town, that actually caters to what like a 30-year-old might want instead of what 70-year-olds might want, right? And frankly, if both him and his wife are retired, I would actually suggest bolder moves. Why not move across the world? Because if you don't do that now, when are you ever gonna pick that type of path, right? When you're older, when you're actually 70? No. Now, finally, I want to address the main gist of what this post is actually about, at least in my opinion, right? The poster even hints at it, right? He says it's all in his head. Yeah. He seems like he's got way too much time on his hands and nothing to do except talk himself into being the center of unwanted attention, right? The easiest cure is just find something to keep you mentally busy. I have heard this complaint even from such illustrious posters on the fire field such as Beat the Bush, right? One of my inspirations. In the sense that, they talk about how they get bored and don't know what to do with themselves. I am astounded whenever I hear this, right? Because this implies that all of us were only ever satisfied and occupied by work that most likely wasn't fulfilling to begin with. This attitude implies that all of our education has done a wonderful job of doing is convincing us if we're not busy with work, then our lives has to be devoid of meaning. I absolutely refuse to believe that or buy into that, okay? I always say, just think about your life when you were a kid, long before you understood gainful employment, right? Did you not have any fun? Was there nothing that gave you joy? Maybe it was just like chasing dragonflies or whatever, butterflies or whatever. So if I want to replicate that as an adult, well, it might be a little weird to try to become an expert on insects at this point, but what's stopping me, right? More realistically, like for instance, I love video games of a certain type, like role-playing games and fighting games. Still love them now. Not a great player, but still love doing it, right? The only difference is I don't have to feel guilty about playing them now because I'm not ignoring work or school to play them. So no consequences, okay? None. So stay busy with whatever it was that originally or at some point have excited you. That's what I say. There's gotta be something before the work grind got to you, right? We're not born into servitude for companies or governments, but taught into them, okay? Now, in conclusion, it's not really just about this one dude's post, right? But his post illustrated how important it is to have a strong mentality, right? If you're interested in fire, let's just be clear. Some people will judge you, but most will do so in silence, right? So the best defense is just not to give a F about what they think. You're the winner. Most of the rest of the population simply can't fathom not doing the regular age of retiring, which is only when they're so old that they can't even have any fun. Don't fall into that trap, right? If you have already fired, you've won. Be happy with that and keep winning some more because you're playing the game of life on New Game Plus, right? And everything at this point is just gravy or icing or whatever you want to call it. Cheers, a la prochaine.